Hey, Honey Wash Day. This is Toksa Hour. I am Maggie Ross, and I am live from Porcupine, South Dakota, along the Porcupine Creek where the porcupines roam. I'm glad to be back. It has been a really good break. I had a good time, meaningful time where I was. And I don't know, I'm getting a thing that says enhance. Enhance what? Anyways, yeah, it was a good break, and I am glad to be back. There's a lot of things to talk about. I don't know how much I'm going to get through. It teaches me to take a week off and go pray, but uh, anyways, I'll have my coffee, my kafia, and you. Um, so I wanted to kind of start out talking um about a couple things. The biggest thing was looking at um, what's her name? Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter. Did you guys see that? Ann Coulter. Let me see if I could pull it up. Um, oh, my mouse does not want to work. Okay, let's see. Which one shall I use? What image of Ann Coulter do you want to see? Um, So this is, let's see if I could pull, this is off of Native News, and I'm going to see if I can pull it up. I always do this thing, I I take these screenshots on my phone, but my phone isn't connected to, it's just, anyways, I always do this to myself. Uh, shoot. Anyway, so here is, um, if we can just get the image. Mm. So this is Ann Coulter up here. You can't really see her. Um, and she's responding to this post by Marina Medvin. Letters, radicals at Socialism 2025 conference are giddily discussing the destruction of America. This woman is a college professor. And so this woman here, I forget what, maybe in the article it says, and we'll get to that if I can make my screen behave. So Ann Coulter, what she did was she posted, retweeted this, and then she said, "We didn't kill enough Indians." And so we go down and we look at this article. Um, it says apparently the millions of Indians killed were not enough for right-wing conservative pundit Ann Coulter. Earlier this week, Coulter responded to a video clip of Dene professor Malini Yazzie advocating for tribal sovereignty by posting on X, formerly Twitter, "We didn't kill enough Indians." This wasn't random hate speech. Coulter was specifically attacking tribal sovereignty and our existence. Her racist post was reportedly viewed over 10 million times. In the clip, Piazzi, who spoke at a December 3, 2023 teach-in in Minneapolis encouraged attendees to lean into the fact that colonizers are scared and argued that decolonization of the United States could address environmental and other concerns. Rather than engage with the substance of Yazie's tribal sovereignty comments, Coulter chose genocidal rhetoric. Coulter's since deleted post drew immediate backlash from Native American tribal leaders and organizations who denounced it as a dangerous incitement to violence against Native communities. So there is quite a bit of things going on in regards to that. The National Congress of American Indians president Mark McCurl says celebrating genocide against tribal nations crosses every moral line. Careless comments like this glorify the darkest chapters of U.S. history and actively endanger Native peoples' lives today. We will not sit silently at attempts to normalize this abhorrent behavior. We demand an immediate retraction and public apology, and we expect leaders of every political persuasion to denounce this abomination without equivation. Anyways. Yeah. So it's really interesting because we're in such crazy times, and it kind of bothers me that for some time now, I know here at Toksa Hour, we have been saying if we do not stand up, if we do not speak up for the Palestinian cause, this is going to affect us. And so it's been affecting us since Trump has been elected. And everybody knew, you know, they always say that, what was it, the 2025 playbook? I forget what they called it. But that. And then people say, oh, it's all your fault, voters, for not showing up for Harris. But then Harris was actively involved in committing the genocide against the Palestinian people, actively funding, you know, she was Biden's vice president. And Democratic Party, they continue to do this big fight against change, progressives. In New York, Zoran Mamdani, he won the primary election. He beat Cuomo, who is a well-established Democrat in New York. Andrew Cuomo. So he beat him. And then the reaction was everybody, because Zoran Mamdani is a Muslim and practices the Islamic faith. And so their response to him was, let's demonize, or let's continue to try to demonize the Islamic faith. And they started putting words in his mouth, things that he didn't even say. And I was really sad for him whenever they were interviewing him about what was happening. I was really sad for him because that Will and Grace actress, Deb Messings, she had made some statements. And so he's like, I was 9 years old, you know, when she was on TV, and I used to actively watch her. And so, you know, he's like real sad. And I'm just like, man, that's messed up. You know, these actresses and actors oftentimes think that they're clout. You know, they have influence. And it's just really crazy. So we have this stuff going on, all of this like united effort amongst I can't even say MAGA supporters anymore, because even many of the MAGA supporters are dropping from him, splitting off from Trump, calling people out. because this isn't what they want. And then you also have the left and the right, how they position us, the far right are the snowflakes of the left, and the MAGA hats and stuff. Well, you have them joining for one cause, Palestine and peace, wanting the end to the Ukraine war, and wanting the end of the genocide of the Palestinian people. And so you see them uniting in this way, and which almost is like, because both are saying this is a uniparty, they both represent the same initiatives, they're both the same for APAC, for having money outside of our politics, taking, anyways. So there's a lot of disgruntledness, and I kind of find some humor in like I was telling people that, like, not everybody, like they'll be disgusted about people who are MAGA or Trump supporters or whatever, and I'm like, well, I have friends, and they're not all happy with what's going on now. Like, they feel betrayed, they've been lied to. And even though we could point out that Trump is like the biggest liar ever, I think, I can't even remember, somebody did a total count of all his lies, his millions, as a politician, as a president. And anyway, so doing that, and talking about Stephen Miller, and kind of, this isn't what they thought was going to happen. Like, their concern is the border. Their concern was illegal immigrants. Their concern, so they're kind of celebrating the ICE stuff, but then some ICE came after some of them. So that was alarming, so there was different things like that started to happen. And so we go through this whole issue of like, I think we're changing. And I wanted to share, so I'm trying to pull it up. Like I said, I save things on my phone, but I'm not on I do this on my laptop, and I always forget to save things over. Everything's a little slow this morning, including me. I was out with my chickens. I'll tell you, man, my chickens are just amazing. I love my chickens. All right, I'm going to repost, and my favorite's one of them. Okay, I'm going to share this out, and it's kind of lengthy, but I want you to listen to it, because this is something that's like really deep. And this guy is kind of, he's a Trump supporter, or was at one point in time. And he's been probably changing, and I follow him on TikTok, because prior to all these crazy political stuff, people were making some really interesting TikToks about different things, and now we're all in this holy crappers, what the hell's happening over there, and everybody's like being traumatized and can't believe that the United States, and they had particularly thought Trump was going to stop all of this, the genocide, the killing of babies, and all of that in Gaza. And so they were very hopeful, because that's what he said he was going to do. and then he didn't, and then now he's just sent, I think they said I think it was $320 million again over of weapons over to Israel after Iran and Israel did their ceasefire. Then the United States stopped back up Israel, and so a lot of people are in disbelief about this. Hold on, I gotta share it. I don't know what's wrong with my screen. I don't know why it does this to me. There we go. Okay, so no,
Absolutely one of my favorite Tucker
let me do this.
Carlson interviews of all time because it perfectly illustrates my point that if you don't understand money and banking and economics, you will be taken advantage of by the people who do.
Like you're as mainstream, you're on the board of Sally Mae, you're a partner of Dylan Reed. It's like, right, you're not just like on the internet.
I just want to warn you that this is heavily edited. I have rearranged. A lot of these things didn't occur in this order, and I've cut out lots of words and pauses to make this as concise and intelligible as possible. I hope you enjoy it.
We have a republic and use this democratic process. What happened in 1913 is the bankers took control of monetary policy. Monetary policy is I control the process by which currency is issued, including through credit. So I generally govern and control credit issuance.
Yes.
And from that, the currency, the creation and management of the currency. What they're trying to do now is take control of fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is when I control the taxes and the borrowing of the U.S. government. I call it a financial coup. I think what happened was when the budget deal busted in 1995, they gave up on the government. They just said, this form of government will not work as a governance structure to manage the dollar system. So I think they decided, okay, we're going to re-engineer government on the just do it method. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull all the money out. We're going to put the government in a debt trap, and then we'll squeeze it and shift to the control model. This is the Boston Tea Party moment. Can they tax without representation? And then the question is, who are the real owners? And that's the mystery. And I've spent my whole life trying to figure out who are the real owners. And basically, from what experience I've had, if you know their name, they're not one of the important owners. Do you know what I mean? It's intergenerational pools of capital. Now, here's what's interesting. One of the most powerful pools of intergenerational capital that I've ever dealt with is the Harvard Endowment. And if you look at the squabble going on over who controls the Harvard Endowment right now, it's a very interesting squabble. The university is only a portion of the Harvard Corporation. The Harvard Corporation runs the university and it runs the endowment. Okay. And the Harvard Corporation, in my experience, is one of the most important investment syndicates in the world. And because they have a tax exemption, they don't have to pay taxes. And my theory is it was the model that was really created to sort of compete with the Vatican and the Catholics, who 2,000 years, diplomatic immunity and no taxes. If you look at the group of people who meet through the BIS,
what's that?
The BIS is the Bank of International Settlements, and it's the central bank of central banks.
Where is that located?
It's in Basel, Switzerland. It has 63 of the most powerful central banks as its members, and the New York Fed and the Fed are both shareholders. They became shareholders in 1994.
In one sentence, what's the purpose of the Bank of International Settlements?
Okay, so there are two things you need to know about the Bank of International Settlements.
I'm not sure my brain's big enough for this, but keep going.
It is.
Okay.
It has sovereign immunity.
What does that mean?
It's above the law.
It's its own country.
Right. It's its own country. It has its own police force. No one has the legal authority to move against it. Okay. It has sovereign immunity. That's number one. Number two, it can move money and hold it on its balance sheet and manage money secretly. So if I want to, and I'm grossly oversimplifying, if I want to steal 21 trillion from the U.S. government and park it on the balance sheet of the BIS, it can move it anywhere in the world and it can keep it on its balance sheet secretly.
Why would there be an organization? First of all, where does its power, who empowered it to have sovereign immunity in the right?
It was created after World War I. It collected its powers and got going in the 30s. And it was created in theory to manage the reparations of the German government. But if you read the real history, it was because the Bank of England and the central bankers wanted an entity that had sovereign immunity. They wanted to be able to move money secretly. So there's a wonderful book called The Tower of Basel by a wonderful Hungarian journalist where he documents and describes the whole history of the Bank of International Settlements. And if you want to understand power in this world, understanding how the Bank of International Settlements and the plumbing of the central banking system works is very, very important.
I've always been worried that if I knew more, that I would become mentally ill.
Reality is sort of the door that you open to find real solutions. And the biggest obstacle to implementing them is nobody wants to face it. And I understand that because the hardest thing I ever had to do, Tucker, was look in the mirror and say, I'm the patsy. I was the assistant secretary of housing. I didn't know. And I went along and I didn't face this. I should have seen this faster. Sometimes it's harder than facing death to admit that you've been part of, a big lie and you've been tricked.
As someone who advocated for the Iraq War on television, I've lived this.
And we have to deal with it. And the solutions, the real solution will be there'll be millions of people acting in their own life, refusing to be controlled, individually. In October of 1997, that's the beginning of the 1998 fiscal year, enormous amounts of money started disappearing from the U.S. government. And literally, by the time of 9/11, there was $4.1 trillion missing from DOD and HUD. And if you remember, the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld stood up. He did a press conference and he said, there's $2.3 trillion in undocumentable adjustments last year at DOD.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And then, of course, as you know.
Yeah.
So just to pause a little bit here. There's been, for a long time, they've been saying that they cannot audit or all this money is missing in the military budget. And so in this interview, what this lady is saying is that this money is being stolen and it's being funneled through the system. And there's no accountability. And so she's going to continue talking about that. And that's pretty alarming that that we're in this situation. Anyway, so okay, let's go back. Jay, my screen, something happened. Something happened to my screen.
Priorities changed.
Right.
And for reasons that we still don't understand. And the average person, I think, sort of thinks, well, maybe there were 19 guys from
Well, but here's
Saudi
what
or something.
I call the Patriot Act the Control and Concentration of Cash Flow Act. One of the things that happened after 9/11, if you look at the history of the black budget and sort of secret financing that the government uses for secret and classified projects, that pot of money had grown and grown and grown, and it had become very dysfunctional to try and get that money. Mortgage fraud, I believe, was one of the biggest sources, and that's why what I was doing sort of went into the heart of the problem. So I litigated with the Department of Justice for 11 years. It was fisticuffing with the tax guys. But anyway, so I had the sort of enemy of the state process of, I had 18 audits, investigations, 12 tracks of litigation, a smear campaign, and physical harassment.
So they didn't like what you were saying?
They didn't like the idea that I would try and stop the mortgage bubble. They really wanted to have a mortgage bubble. And
Why is this pausing?
And we were doing things to bring disclosure. The Patriot Act and that whole process was very successful at moving a lot more money onto the budget. In other words, it made it much easier to get enormous amounts of money for the national security state. If you look at the financial crisis, what you're saying is these companies can lose trillions of dollars, have it replaced by the taxpayer, and keep on going. A decision was made by Ann Coulter in the Department of Justice to not prosecute HSBC. There's a wonderful video on the Best Evidence channel by John Titus about this whole thing. There's a definite financial stability board of a financially systemically important institution.
Right.
These institutions are free to break the law. At most, all they have to do is kick back a piece of the profits to the Department of Justice. So it's like a formal kickback system. And what you're saying is that you're taking the sovereign immunity of the BIS and through the New York Fed, extending it to the banks that are running these operations.
JP Morgan and the rest, Bank of America. Yeah.
Right. What you've done with the BIS, the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, you've created all these different organizations. You've created an international overlay of organizations that have various forms of sovereign immunity. Of course, the big one being the BIS. I don't know if you ever saw it. One of the greatest explanations of globalization ever given. Sir James Goldsmith came to the United States in 1994 and he did an interview with Charlie Rose, and he described why we should never approve the Uruguay round of GATT and institute the WTO.
If you could summarize his argument, what would it be?
He said, we are going to hollow out the middle class in the West, and we are going to devastate our culture.
Our culture?
Yes, our culture. We're going to devastate our culture, and we're going to devastate the quality of the food supply.
He said that?
Yes. Now, those are my words of way of saying it. You should watch it. And I think to this day, I think it's the best description.
That China, in the new millennium, will be the world's fastest growing economy.
That's great.
And it'll be a market.
That's wonderful.
And those people will be buying products.
That's wonderful.
From the industrialized world.
And let's benefit from that. And we can work together. But how do you benefit from that without destroying ourselves? You go and you create a corporation in China. And you build a factory in China. And what do you want to sell? Mugs? Sell mugs in China. And you conquer part of the Chinese market by competing there fair and square in China. That's life. That's adding to the activity of China. You're a corporate citizen over there. You're working over there. But if you move a factory from the States and take that to China, not so as to conquer the Chinese market, but so as to re-import the goods into the States, so as to get cheap labor, what are you doing? What you are doing is you are saying to your employees here, you're too expensive, folks. You want money, you want protection, you want unions, you want holidays. Forget it. We can employ 47 people over there who want nothing. The economy is there to serve the fundamental needs of society.
Yes.
Which are prosperity.
Yes.
Which are stability.
Yes.
And which are contentment. If, purely for an economic doctrine, you have a situation whereby the economy grows, but you create poverty, unemployment, and you destabilize the society, you're in trouble.
The leadership knew that this would destroy and devastate the West. We were trying to exercise more and more control through the dollar system. And we've always exercised a lot of power and control and extracted a subsidy from the dollar system. But you have more and more people trying to get out of the system. And that deglobalization started in the financial crisis. So it's accelerating now, but it's not that we just started it. The White House, the Senate, the House, Republican and Democrat, all of them together issued an administrative policy called Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board Statement 56. And what that policy said, we do not have to obey the constitutional provisions related to financial budgeting and disclosure. We do not have to obey the laws, and we do not have to obey the regulations. What we can do is appoint a secret group of people by a secret process to move money out of the financial disclosures of the United States, the 24 covered agencies, plus approximately 150 governmental entities. And when you throw in the classification laws and the national security laws, it also applies to the big banks and contractors working for the U.S. government. When I look at the U.S. large cap stock market or the U.S. bond market, the treasury market, I have no financial disclosure that has any meaning. Everything's secret. I have no idea what it means. If I pick up the financials of a New York Fed member bank that is running the U.S. Treasury Department's bank accounts, or if I pick up the Treasury financial statements, they're meaningless. They don't mean anything.
What's missing?
You can't know. All you can know is a secret group of people can make whatever they want go missing, and you can't know what it is. It's all secret. As a legal matter, to that administrative policy agreed upon by the uniparty can overrule the Constitution, can overrule the laws, and can overrule the regulations simply by you wave the wand and suddenly magically law doesn't matter. Between fiscal 1998 and fiscal 2015, there were 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments. So the question is, where's all this money going? And one of the things I've looked at is,
one of the things that we're doing here is looking at how basically politicians, the government, the elite, the rich are just stealing from us, and they've made themselves sovereign. So they created a sovereignty status through this banking process to continue to just create problems, havoc. And so it's really interesting. This interview was done with Tucker Carlson. It's Catherine Austin Fitz that is interviewed. And she creates, this has had me really thinking, has me really, really thinking. And it's really a great interview, and I'll continue letting it play out here.
the underground base and city infrastructure and transportation system that's been built. And
I'm sorry?
So we have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems. Some of these are some of these are documented as part of the national security infrastructure. I think there are many more.
In the United States?
In the United States, and all over the world. To me, there are two purposes. You have so many activities going on that you need to keep secret that you're basically...
I don't know what's going on here. Hold on. My screen.
Building the capacity to, for example...
kind of did something here. Hold on. Is it sharing? I can't tell if I'm sharing. Okay. All right, let's see if we can get this going again.
If you're doing a secret space program, you need to platform it from, things that can't be seen. But I think if you're worried about a near extinction event, I don't know if you ever saw, Washington posted a project, it was in 2010 or 12, called Top Secret America, and put together a database of all the different top secret installations that had been built in the country, including since the Patriot Act. And what you saw was just this explosion of money in building so many, both underground and above ground facilities. How do a few sneak up on the many? Well, you have to do it very quietly and visibly before you throw the trap.
Smart.
So essentially what they're building, because it's converting a currency system into a control system. So it's really the end of currency. And what they're doing is they've been building the different digital pieces. And when it integrates and comes together, then you literally have a digital concentration camp. It's complete and utter control. What we're talking about is a system where you can surveil, control, and influence one person at a time. And with AI and software, each person can have their custom surveillance, influence, nudging, and control system.
And punishment.
Yes, enforcement. So go back and think of the pandemic. So if I say you can't go more than a mile from your home, and I say you have to be mandated a pharmaceutical, then if you don't take the pharmaceutical, I can turn off your money. If you go more than a mile away from your home, your money and your credit cards won't work. In 2020, when the pandemic started, or it was October 2020, so the pandemic was underway, the general manager of the Bank of International Settlements was on an IMF panel. And in 1 minute, it's the first time in my life I ever saw a central banker tell the truth. I fell off my chair. And he said, you know, the beauty of this is we can set the rules on how your money works, and we have the technology to enforce them. So look at what they did to the Canadian truckers. We don't like what you're doing. We cut off your money, and we cut off your friends' money. And if people help you, we cut off their money too. So I've known so many different people around the country who've been debanked. We just got legislation passed in Tennessee that a bank over a certain size couldn't debank someone for political or religious reasons. During the Biden administration, Biden nominated somebody for control of currency who was ultimately not approved. The Republicans in the Senate killed the nomination. Before she was nominated, 3 weeks before, she wrote an article in the Vanderbilt Law Review that said the great thing about central bank digital currency, in other words, an all digital currency system, is you have the perfect tool to deal with inflation. If inflation gets out of hand, you just freeze everybody's bank accounts. The litigation starts, and literally you go from being very wealthy and very trusted and very respected to being an enemy of the state. No one will talk to you.
Remember, this is kind of what Trump is threatening Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the richest man on earth. And so he's threatening him. And so it could be through this process that Elon Musk, all his currency gets frozen. And what makes Elon Musk like wealthy so Elon Musk, his wealth is all tied up in markets. It's tied up in things that he doesn't really like. He doesn't have $1 trillion sitting right in a bank that he can just go grab and get. It's tied up in things. And so when he wants to do this fight with Trump over this big, beautiful bill that got passed, and Trump says, I will take your contracts, I will, do these things to you, and then now they're even threatening to deport him. So he's not safe right now. The way they're doing this, the way she is describing all of this, is that they have the capability of freezing any and all of our assets at any time.
It's your phone, and suddenly all your income stops. Your credit stops. You're just frozen.
And by yours, you mean yours.
Yeah. So anyway, so you have the assets that you have. Luckily, they never turned off my bank account, so I was lucky that way. But one of the things that happened was I'd had a farm in New Hampshire, and I sold my share to my uncle, and I warned him, if you buy this, they may come after you too. I sell him the farmland. They call him and they say, your niece is a criminal and you shouldn't be doing this. They show up at his house in Portsmouth, New Hampshire at 9 p.m. at night, 3 FBI guys and a HUD IG guy with a subpoena. And it was designed to scare him. So the family had a big powwow. Should they drop me because they don't want to be targeted? He said she helped everyone, so I'm going to help her. At the end of the process, when I won the litigation, we got money coming in. I sat down to either repay everybody who loaned me or gifted me money. I counted it up, and what I realized is I had come into the litigation having loaned $250,000, and then over the next 9 years, exactly $250,000 had come back. And Tucker, if it wasn't for that money, I wouldn't be here. I would never have made it through. And it was because it was in the people bank, and they couldn't shut the people bank off. They could do all sorts of things to shut off all sorts of resources and income. But if it's in the people bank and the people you love and trust, it comes back. They put my 401k under audit, so I couldn't use it to finance the business. It was dirty tricks. Anyway, so I take the money out. So my accountant, when we get the settlement money, she said, let's fund up the 401k. I said, no, I'm never going into business with the U.S. government again. But the other thing is I'm taking that $500,000 and I'm bonusing it out on the people bank.
And if this piques your interest, please take the time to watch the full interview with Tucker Carlson because it is really incredible. This is absolutely one of my favorite Tucker Carlson.
So, that's it. Now I don't know how to end share. Oh my God. My thing doesn't want to let me end share. Stop share. There it is. Zoom has new functions. That must be a part of the enhanced thing that they were. saying. Anyways, I'm just lost here. Oh my, this mouse is not the best mouse ever. I need to get me a new mouse because it's like I'm double clicking, triple clicking. My screen isn't accepting the clicks. I don't know. It's comical. But anyways, so these are the things. These are the things. Why is this important? Why was that important for me to show you? And I could have just did a summary. I could have just summarized and said, this is what this lady said on Tucker Carlson. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to hear her yourself on Toksa Hour. So when we think about Ann Coulter saying we did not kill enough Indians, and we see and feel the racism coming towards us, and as Indigenous people, Dakota people, when we try to resist, this is a good possibility, is that in our resistance, they freeze our assets. They freeze our accounts. They freeze everything. So then they starve us. And so those are things that we need to be thinking about when we think about going forward and elections. Like, this is even for tribal councils, tribal presidents. We need to know where their money is coming from, who is financing them to run for office, and what they are doing. Like, our tribes all should be passing some kind of legislation that says what Tennessee did, that no bank can do that, can freeze anybody's assets on our reservation. And then we should open banks on our reservations and then put our money in those banks. This is the other reason why, if you can recall, I've talked about BRICS before. And BRICS is a new and rising, it's been for about 5-10 years, growing. And BRICS is Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, and who's the S BRICS? Saudi Arabia, maybe? No? Let me Google. Anyways, who is BRICS? That's what I'm going to ask. BRICS is an intergovernmental organization comprising 10 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. It originated as a grouping of major emerging economies and has developed into a significant platform for cooperation among these nations. BRICS aims to enhance the influence of emerging nations in global affairs and promote economic collaboration. And so this is the biggest reason why the United States and why the West opposes BRICS, is because they created this banking system that the elite control. And so that they're able, like through the United Nations or whatever, to go and sanction Russia, or the United States can say, we are going to sanction Russia, and we are going to sanction all of the oligarchs of Russia who are funding Putin. And they would do it. If they had money in the United States or whatever, they'd be able to start shutting down or controlling their money. And that is a way to make people back off, not support, not do, or whatever, is that this can happen. And they use it as a flex. So now BRICS comes along and they're creating a system that isn't based off of the petrodollar. The petrodollar is what the United States created. Before, everything used to be based off of gold or silver. And then when oil became a thing, the United States transformed the financial system with oil. So petro oil. So everybody's invested in the petro oil. Well, BRICS is not. BRICS is going back and they're investing back into silver and gold. And so they tell people, go buy silver, go buy gold, go buy silver is the biggest thing right now. Go buy silver. You need to buy silver. They also say you need to pull your money out of your retirement accounts because you're going to lose it. So that's another thing. And I've been slowly doing that, pulling my money out of my retirement. And so they suggest that to people. That's what you need to do. You need to pull your money because you can lose it, not only if they go through a freeze process like this, but you could lose it if you have, the markets crash. And this lady she's talking about how also they can go into like your family, everybody, and start freezing people. And so for a long time, remember when housing crashed, the banks crashed, there's no accountability. There was no accountability for it. And she explains why, because they had sovereignty. So you can't, remember Occupy Wall Street and all of that, like all of these demonstrations. That's why they just laugh us off, is because they all have the sovereignty protection that has been given to them through these legislative pieces that violate the Constitution. For some reason, that's what they're doing. And I never knew. I knew something was up. I always wondered, like, how is this happening? How do they not face consequences? Well, now I know. And our Congress and senators, they're all on the take. They're all involved in this. Trump, he's involved in it. Every president of the United States since, what did they say, 95? Have been involved in it. They know. That's when they started creating the system. And then if you think back and you start tracking, you'll see that that's where we start really going into a decline. So everything is controlled, and there's a lot of people talking about taking their money, like getting their money out of their accounts. There's people talking, but I don't know how that would work if you just went to a paper check versus direct deposit, because you still would have to cash the check and they could freeze your account that way. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and like we need to pay attention to it. I don't know. Shoot. We are coming up on elections, even though it's only 2025, we're going to start. We heard Dusty Johnson say that he's going to run for the governor. And so we need to know that Dusty Johnson voted for the big, beautiful bill. We also need to know Mike Brown's position is up, and he also voted for the big, beautiful bill. Mike Brown's also introduced a bill to end the Department of Education, so we need to remember that. John Thune, he's still in. He just was reelected, so he's there for 6 more years. But he also voted for the big, beautiful bill. Kristi Noem is out terrorizing people. And I just had this conversation with a friend of mine where he wanted me to define what criminal was. So I told him Donald Trump. He's like, explain illegal. really try to change the whole thing on me, but anyways, yeah. Yeah, that's what I did. Uh, so Christine Ohm, they had a flood, right? They had a flood in Texas, and a lot of people died. And it took, I think they said 5 or 6 days for Christine Ohm to release FEMA help, and Donald Trump was anyway, so Mexico emergency response came over and helped save lives. And they got deported. Governor Abbott, he's all like, I support that action of ICE. It's like if those Mexican people did not do that, there would have been more death in Texas. And Texas was a red state. It used to be a blue state. Then George W. Bush was able to kind of flip that to a red state, and in their red stateness, they became full of like really a lot of anger and being mad about things. And now we see the ramifications in California. In California, they are now you have crops that are dying because nobody's coming to work because they're raiding the farm fields. And Florida is the same. And Trump, he goes and he says that all of the illegal immigrants are going to be imprisoned and they're going to the alligator Alcatraz. And that place is like $420 million to build and to run annually. And it is reported that means it's like $302,000 per immigrant or something like that. That's what's coming in for there. So they have inflated the ICE budget. And the ICE is getting in that's through the big beautiful bill. ICE now is overfunded or has more funding than the Marine Corps. So to fund all of this stuff. And so Trump now says that illegal immigrants will now become slaves, that they will enslave them, and the farmer will become their owner, like they would oversee them. And they don't say slavery, they say it in a different language. Let me see if I could pull up his language. He calls them so it's easier to. So it says, Donald Trump's rhetoric on illegal immigration has drawn comparisons to slavery, particularly in his comments about farmers and undocumented workers, suggesting a system where employers would take responsibility for their employees. He stated, we have a lot of cases where ICE will go into a farm. The farmers know them. It's called farmer responsibility. This language has led many to question the implications of his statements. Trump has also indicated that he would put the farmers in charge of deciding whether to deport agricultural workers. He stated, if a farmer is willing to vouch for these people in some way, we're going to have to just say that's going to be good, right? It says Trump's hardline stance on immigration has been characterized by derogatory language about undocumented immigrants, often labeling them as animals and not human. His rhetoric has been criticized. Research shows that immigrants, both legal and undocumented, generally commit less crime than native-born Americans. Anyways, yeah, so that's what Trump's doing. And then there's still reports of Indigenous people in the Southwest being arrested by ICE and detained, and I think there was a couple that were deported. So we're not safe. There was a reporting of some ICE in Sioux Falls, and the Sioux Falls community, from what I understand, kind of surrounded the ICE people to help the immigrants or the people that were being targeted. And they don't care. They don't have to care if you're, as long as you fit the profile. So if you fit the profile, then they can attack you. They'll just take you. They don't care if you're a citizen or not. And so that's like what one of the biggest fusses is about. Trump also, Gavin Newton in California and Stephen Miller are having it out. The courts in California ruled in favor of the Constitution, saying that ICE can no longer profile people and deport them based off of a profile. And the Supreme Court, remember, they ruled a couple weeks ago saying that no judge can do a unilateral ruling anymore. So now everybody's filing. So everybody's filing within these systems. And so that's going to just bog down the court system. So good job, Donald Trump. So once some of these rulings go out, they're going to have a lot of money to defend their positions in the court system. And right now they are calling any judge, even Republican appointed judges, they're all commies or fascist or something like that if they don't rule in favor of Donald Trump. And it's really crazy. Like Stephen Miller and them, just before this election, all the MAGA people were screaming around about government trying to control them and having like their rights. And now they've transformed rights as into the Constitution does not give us rights. The rights that we have as human beings come from God. And it's the Christian God. So they're trying to turn us into a theocracy. They're telling us that all our rights in the United States come from God, from the Christian God, that they don't even follow anyways. Anyway, so that's where our rights come from, not from the Constitution. So they're openly telling us, and if you go listen to your politicians, they're openly telling us this. And so Dusty Johnson is running for governor. We need to be asking him what he thinks about that. And why is he voting and supporting these things? He wants to be governor of South Dakota. Even people who are strong, make America great again people, you need to be thinking about this as well, because this does affect you. You think that it doesn't. You think that, no, it's just about the illegal immigrants. No, you just think about this. But this is coming and knocking on your door, and it's going to affect you. And these people that you are giving your full-hearted support to are misrepresenting you. They are misinforming you and outright lying to you about what they're doing. And you've asked us to open our eyes, right? Like Don't be a sheep to the government. Now we're asking you, don't be a sheep to the government. Don't be a sheep to Donald Trump. Open your eyes, because we are all in danger. We are all in danger because of this whole system. So if you guys get a chance, please go watch Tucker Carlson. He's on YouTube. You can watch that whole video. Another person I would suggest is Candace Owens. She has been coming with a lot of stuff on the Epstein files, Trump, and so if you don't know, Candace and Tucker Carlson are both MAGA people. Joe Rogan, MAGA person. They're all starting to come out and come against what is happening in government. A lot of our Democratic people, they're only coming out against Trump so that they can win an election. They're not coming out against Trump because of the people fighting for our rights in that way. They are doing it so they can get back to the status quo. And so we need to be asking them those questions. What are you going to do for us? And how are you going to end these things? Because our Constitution gave us these rights as citizens. So how are we going to uphold this Constitution? Anyways, I hope I didn't bore you to death with the conversation today. I'm still working on, or I didn't get feedback yet, or on a date on some of the interviews that I'm lining up. Anyways, you guys have a great day, and it's Sunday. I gotta go mow, gotta get to work, so and then I gotta work on my chicken coop again. So with that, be blessed, and I will see you guys